So the first question, and Sydney, we'll start with you on this one. Can you just tell us your programming story right now? What's going on with programming in your library? How's the pandemic affected this? I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Sydney from just south of Pittsburgh. Right now, our programming has been a little all over the place. We have worked to adapt some things that had been scheduled into a virtual format. Some things were reimagined and other things were brand new. For our youth services, during the school year, we did our best to provide a daily calendar time, which was just a short program counting the days of the week, singing a few songs with like an early childhood or kindergarten readiness component that went with it as well. We had, our typical story times where we read stories and shared those out. We also worked to share out middle school and high school resources. We did some scary story times, Friday Night Frights, some STEM-focused ones. We adapted our pause for reading where kids came in and read to therapy dogs to a virtual format with one of our coworkers filming their dog and editing it with iMovies. We've done trivias, DIYs, and all of this programming, we did it as an on-demand program. We felt that a lot of the feedback we were getting from our community was that they were overwhelmed with schoolwork and trying to get things done by a deadline. So we tried to create programming that they could come and get to it as they pleased. So none of these programs were live. As we're moving into summer reading and away from the school year, and hopefully things are starting to calm down, we're looking to do more live programming. One thing we also created was the Hogwarts Digital Escape Room, which was another on-demand programming that people could access. I know some people might have a few questions about that, so I'll do my best to just give a broad overview. The Hogwarts Digital Escape Room was created and went live on Thursday, March 19th. Our library closed its doors on the 14th, and we were actually supposed to have a superhero-themed escape room that day. That we had to cancel, and I wanted to provide a digital or a virtual version of that. I used to teach in Tennessee, and we had done digital escape rooms down there at the end of the school year to review content. So I made an algebra themed escape room, but making a Harry Potter Hogwarts one was a lot more fun than the algebra. So made that, it went live. Some challenges that did arise along the way with that. Within the first few days, one of my coworkers tried to reach out and get J.K. Rowling's attention. Hey, look at this Hogwarts Digital Escape Room. Look how awesome it is. And we actually got a phone call from Warner Brothers instead, asking that it's fine for now, but once the current health crisis ends, they would like it to be taken down. And with further conversations with them and delving into it a little bit on our own, the original version of the escape room had the movie trailer to the first movie that you had to watch and then answer a question about it. So a week into it, I decided to rearrange the escape room, take that puzzle down, add a new one. That way it was no longer a problem with Warner Brothers. So we've had that one going on for a while, and then we just recently did a Hunger Games survival game also through Google Forms. For our adult programming, we've had cooking videos. Our book clubs have met over Zoom. We've had afternoon tunes where a local musician shares out, easy to follow along kind of karaoke style songs. We've hosted digital resource classes with our genealogy and other databases, and we had to cancel a poetry salon we were supposed to have in April. One of my coworkers, our assistant director actually, she reached out to the poets who were supposed to come into the library, and they agreed to, record themselves reading some of their poetry, so she was able to put a video together, and that's actually been a pretty popular video on our YouTube channel right now. But for our programs, since most of them have been on demand, I've seen when some of the comments where people were talking about, not that many people had watched it or been that into it. Some of ours have been successful and others not so much. And I think it just goes along with a lot of our families in our community have been very overwhelmed with their schoolwork. And unless it was something that really caught their eye at the time, it wasn't something that they were able to spend time on. But we're hoping as we move into summer reading, we'll be able to do a little bit more with that. I think that's it for me right now.
All right. Thanks, Sydney. Amy, thanks for being here. I'll ask you the same question. Can you tell me your programming story?
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And I got so many good ideas from Sydney there. My mind is just racing. I am actually participating on the other side of the equation. I was hired to give some talks at libraries, both author visits for book groups and some bigger events where I was a speaker. And also I teach library school, so the things I've seen my students do that they've really enjoyed are trivia programs. Many of them are doing story times. And some of them are doing story times for older kids too, or for families, or in different languages. And I thought that was really interesting. I made up a handout for today that's just links of other libraries that I think are doing an amazing job. Although looking at the chat, that so many of you are doing so many great programs right now. And one of the things that I did as an author visit, I'm not comfortable talking about myself as an author. So what I am comfortable doing is talking about cookbooks and food history. And there is no way my kitchen is clean enough to be doing a cooking demonstration. But some of the things that I do talk about is like food history. So one book discussion group was doing a book from a particular time period, and I can talk about those foods. And I'm not talking about like a very intricate, knowledgeable food history. I'm talking about Jell-O history. So you never know what's going to strike a chord with your patrons. And I've done both smaller and larger groups. What I've found is that the people want to have time to talk about their own things. So I do tell like food trends from history, like what was popular during World War II, or what people were doing with their victory gardens, or, you know, like I said, Jell-O or various dessert or pie trends, or what was popular in church cookbooks, or what people have from their family recipes or ethnic recipes that they love from their family story. But it's as much as possible, I was trying to give people an opportunity to engage also. So those are the things. And I also see my local library is doing music programming. They are tapping both staff and public talents because, as many of you are saying, there is not a lot of staff time or effort beyond what you're putting into Curbside or some of the other things right now. But it's amazing, as always, what librarians are doing with fewer resources.
All right, thanks, Amy. Why don't I start with a couple of our questions from the audience, and there have been a few. So Sydney, I think this first one may be with you. Does anyone have stats or any other metrics for how long people stay on your pre-recorded programs? We get lots of clicks, but based on the stats we can access, it does not appear that people stay on the pre-recorded programs for more than a moment or so, and I think we could broaden that just to any online programs.
Yeah, initially, I'm going to guess whoever asked that question, if you're saying clicks and time spent on it, is probably the Facebook Insights. We were initially just posting our stuff on Facebook, but we found, oh my gosh, we've gotten, 400 views on this video. That's amazing. But once we went further into their insights and metrics, 300 of those views were 3-second views. And then breaking it down to how many were more than 30 seconds. So the more we talked about it as a group and a team, we felt that Facebook was not giving us an accurate representation of what we wanted, our numbers, well, not necessarily what we wanted our numbers to be, what our numbers should be, what was more realistic. So we made the decision to switch all of our videos to load them to YouTube first, and we found that YouTube has given us more realistic numbers of what our views should be. They're not close to what our actual programs would be if we had been having them physically, but they were not super inflated anymore. So that's why we decided to use YouTube instead of Facebook. Now, we still use Facebook for some things, such as if we do like a Facebook Live, and that's where we've looked at using the engagements or the comments on it instead of just clicks or likes or views. So it just depended on the program and the metric that we used for it. For ones that have been Zoom programs like the genealogy classes or Word or Excel, then those have been, typical attendance.
All right, thanks, Sydney. Amy, anything to add on measuring engagement or attentiveness, anything like that?
That's the hardest thing with virtual programming. I'm going to go along with what Sydney said about how it can be hard to respond to comments that come later, especially with pre-recorded things. And I think we've all seen this with Zoom meetings, is it's hard to get people their turn to talk and engage while it's happening. It's so hard to, and I've even noticed doing webinars for ALA is that a lot of times I feel like I'm sitting at home laughing at my own jokes, right? But getting the feedback from people is the hardest thing. And I think it's a new skill that we're going to develop on top of the many skills that we develop on the job as librarians all the time, right? So it was fun. Doing the smaller groups really gave me a better sense of how to engage with the people. And then as they get larger, like we're doing today, is pulling questions the best we can. So it's a new skill I think everybody is picking up.
All right, well, let's move on with our planned discussion. And I think this probably covers a lot of people here, but Amy, I'll stick with you on this question first, and then we'll go to Sydney. For people here who are feeling just totally lost and overwhelmed, because I know we've got people today with varying levels of experience. Some of you were already doing online programming before the pandemic, and some of you are new to it now. So for those who are feeling just totally lost and overwhelmed, what can you suggest about how to start? Just sort of, ground floor beginnings for alternative programming.
I love this question. One of the things, I was a teen programming librarian for 20 years, and we always made the teens work for us. It's how I like to think about that. We had teens who could do amazing Indian dance or who could do performances and things. Can you tap your probably amazing staff also to do some craft or a skill? I saw lots of libraries are doing things like Monday motivation or Monday crafts. Can you have a staff member demonstrate something they're good at, or teach something, if they're not comfortable, teach something on a small level? Maybe you have a new 15-minute craft you show every Monday to adults, or you have quick book talks where you go over what can you do that's fast, easy, and no cost. And you think, all right, well, that's why I'm here. You're supposed to tell me. But I am guessing you're doing some things already. What are the programs you most enjoyed and you had the best engagement doing before? Is there a way you can do some of that on a smaller scale? Are there staff members who are really good at something or have a strange collection? And honestly, that's how I fell into cookbook talks. I have 3,000 vintage cookbooks and various libraries, and I blogged about it for several years. And one of my coworkers was like, "You probably should start giving talks on these." And I knew that meant that they were all tired of hearing about them, and also that I maybe could tap into an audience. And I found that there were a lot of adults and a lot of seniors who wanted nostalgia and memory. So what are your staff? And yes, they are already overworked, but are there family members? Are there teams with a lot of talent? What are some things that you can already do that you can share and that likely patrons would absolutely love? So I would start there. And it doesn't have to be, people are very understanding about technical difficulties right now too, I've found, for the most part. So we can use that to our advantage at the moment and try different formats like Zoom and Facebook Live and some of the other ones that might work. So start small, and you probably have a ton of talent to tap right in the library right now.
Thanks, Amy. Sydney, could we get your thoughts?
Whenever we started doing virtual programming, our library went from a staff of about 27 to 6. So all of that fell on 6 employees, and not all of those employees were geared up or ready to do virtual programming. So we had a lot fall on just a few. So we were definitely there feeling lost, feeling overwhelmed with what to do and how to get started and how best to reach our community. So that's where we just initially began sharing out what resources we already had. For us, TA Power Library, we have book flicks, so we were sharing out things that people with library cards could access. And then we went on from there to just, you know, it's after the kid went to sleep at night, got my husband to record me reading a story, and learned how to do iMovie, which did definitely take some finagling to figure out. But it was a slow process for us. Like I said before, we closed on March 14th, so here we are 2.5 months into this, and it took us a long time to get to where we are now. One of the easiest programs that I had done was just the Facebook Live trivia. We had hosted trivia in the library before, and I just adapted some of the questions or found more online to ask them. We just made sure we really marketed it beforehand since it was a live event. And that's something, if you don't feel comfortable with your face on the computer, Facebook Live also allows you to screen share, so you could have the questions as like a PowerPoint instead.
I think what you said goes really nicely into one of the audience questions. So Sid, we'll stick with you on this one. Somebody asked about quality control, which is a real issue for people who either are just getting started or who are, suddenly amping up the volume of online programming they're doing. So what's your approach to quality control and consistency?
There have been 3 of us making videos, and we even had, Zoom chats in the meantime with one another because someone knew how to use iMovie a lot better than the other 2 of us did, and so she was sharing out how that worked and what things we could do. So I would say our quality has gotten better, but I think also having a smaller amount of people work on it and also sharing it with each other first. Since we were uploading to YouTube, we were able to create those videos as unlisted, so no one else could see them yet, and send them out and get feedback like, hey, I think you need to adjust your volume, bring it up, or, something's a little cut off there. So we were able to share that out and get feedback from one another first before it was something that we made public.
Amy, any other thoughts on quality control?
Like Dad, one of the things I learned in 20 years of teen programming is that absolutely no program ran the way I planned it. And sometimes it ran so much better when it had teen feedback. The same measures that we use for quality control in-house programs, we're still going to have those duds that your local team will be in a championship the day you've planned some really expensive event, or you'll have something you've put a ton of promotion in and no one will come, and then you'll have a very inexpensive program and the room will be filled to the seams. That's always going to happen. Happily, some of those things we don't have to deal with virtual. But quality control, as Sydney said, it's only going to improve as we keep doing this. Many of our patrons are very understanding. They're happy to see us doing things. They're happy to see you trying to do things. If you're shy or nervous about public speaking, just keep remembering that. I find an audience talking about Jell-O recipes from the 70s. You never know what's going to connect with your audience. Something you're talking about could be striking a memory and really inspiring and enjoyment, and we can't see it as much because we're behind a screen, but you're still making a difference, even recording your story times the first time you've done it. All of these things are helping.
All right, thanks, Amy. And another question we got that's really, really good, especially right now, is how we address or how we attempt to address the digital divide. And Amy, why don't we stick with you and then we'll move to Sid. But, obviously it's much easier, well, in normal times, it's much easier for people to get to the library in person. And people don't have that option now. So what can people do to address or at least attempt to address the digital divide when it comes to online programming?
What a great question. Number one is the understanding that it exists, and strongly. And I think those of us with kids at home who are trying to learn online, we've seen it. We've seen it in the school districts where a lot of the kids maybe weren't able to have access to some of those materials. What can we do? We can try different platforms. I'm so amazed at all of you rattling off all these movie maker things you're doing. The more technologies we are trying to use or attempting, and again, patrons will understand if our first attempts at some of these things are not fabulous. Are you trying to reach teens where they are? This has always been the tenet of teen programming. So it's the same kind of thing with technology. You just keep trying the new formats. You understand that people aren't going to have them. Maybe some of these available are as recordings so that people can access them later when they're able to get to computers in the library again. Just trying to be our usual creative selves and doing our best to adapt to new technologies. But it's an ongoing problem, and it was there even before we had this issue.
Thanks, Amy. Sid, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, probably mid-May, our team got together and we knew that the face of our virtual programming was still going to change as we moved into summer reading and hopefully got additional staff members back. So we worked together to create a survey for our community. We have a newsletter that we send out. So we send it out initially to our newsletter and then shared it out on social media and other avenues. But we got feedback from not just families with young kids for youth services, but also adults and older adults to see what kind of programming they might like. And from that survey is where we started doing genealogy classes and other computer classes. And so those have been predominantly populated by older adults who would come into the library typically for these programs, but we're attending them via Zoom instead. So I think Amy brought up some good points, and we definitely have to acknowledge that digital divide is there. And unfortunately, until we can get back into our physical spaces and invite people back into our physical spaces, there might be some people who are not able to attend programs as they typically would. I know something we'll talk about a little bit later too is now that we personally have started Curbside in the last 2 weeks, we're looking to also start some Curbside programming that might help get programming to other individuals as well.
All right, thanks so much. And Sid, let's stick with you. And there have been a lot of audience questions here that I think sort of echo this. Marketing. How do we spread the word about this stuff when people aren't coming in? They can't come in and look at the bulletin board or ask the reader services librarian.
So that survey I just mentioned, another piece of feedback we got from that programming survey was, we didn't know that you guys were doing all of these virtual programs, because we had mostly only been advertising them through our Facebook and other social media. So we were missing out on a large group of people who did typically come to programs, but they didn't know about it because they don't follow us on Facebook or Instagram. So we've worked a lot harder to make sure our stuff goes out in our newsletter. We know that people still come up to our building and peek in the doors. So while we were still physically closed, we have a turtle at the library, so somebody has to go take care of the turtle. So, we've been printing off signs to put up there to direct people to our website. Even if it was something we were only hosting on Facebook or on our YouTube, we still made sure we put it on our event calendar for the library. That way families and people who typically checked that calendar to see what was happening, they saw it there and could follow the link to our Facebook or YouTube page to see that program. Now that we're starting Curbside, we are putting, flyers of information, like for our summer reading program and other stuff, in their Curbside pickup bags, so that way they get that information at home too. We're looking, our library personally is run by our local township. So once our township has a little bit more information about what the future holds as we go into green here in Pennsylvania, they're hoping to do a mailer out to the entire community. So we're hoping to get some more information to direct people to the library website there.
All right. Thanks, Sydney. Amy, your thoughts on marketing and spreading the word?
I love Sydney's idea about putting a bookmark or a flyer in materials for Curbside. I always used to say put materials for programs in things that were holds that were going to be picked up at the libraries, especially put them in the teen materials so they find out about programs. But frankly, I could go to people's houses personally and tell them everything the library has to offer, and they still wouldn't get it, right? We were up against this even before the virtual event, but now it does add an extra dimension of stress to the virtual programming, and Sydney's absolutely right. How are we going to reach the folks who maybe aren't on the social media and the other things? And I was thinking about seniors, and one of the things our local church and other places do is they reach out to regular seniors. And we know who our regular seniors are going to the book clubs. Now, we're not reaching everybody there, but would it be possible to call those folks at least and say, hey, can you access this program? We have this event going. Tell your friends. Call the assisted living centers who definitely are looking for stress relief right now. And is there a way that they can project some of the programs and get them to participate in it too? And I know direct mailings is a little bit risky with the flu also right now, but local libraries I've seen have been sending out smaller brochures about summer reading and upcoming events. Some of that will have to be done too, even though I know that's staff time and getting the materials sent out. So we'll keep trying to reach people, and community partners will help us and do the best we can. And again, it's going to be a learning curve for patrons, just like any new kind of service. But it sounds like many of you are having amazing success already. I'm so impressed with the things that have been contributed in the chat. So great ideas.
So we're having a few people ask about curbside programming, and I want to make sure, I know, Sydney, you mentioned stuff about curbside pickup, but I just want to see if either of you want to weigh in on we just had this very basic question: what does curbside programming look like? So I'll just open it up to either of you.
Not 100% sure yet, but we're going to do it. We've seen a lot of ideas online from other librarians about either just a small craft kit that goes along with maybe a story or another program that you have going on, but something that whenever they come do curbside or come pick it up, they can complete it at home, but it also goes with another program that we're already doing. So since our curbside just started, we've really tried to get a handle on that with only 6 staff, and I think we had over 600 items put on hold in about 2 weeks. We were very busy, especially since we weren't all allowed to be in the building at the same time. So our plan moving forward is to do curbside programs. We've talked about it specifically with our youth services and children's department, but if anyone has any ideas for adult curbside program, I would love to hear that, because since we do have a limited staff still, we're trying to tap whatever resources we can with who we are able to.
Amy, anything to add there on curbside programming?
I think it was the Queens Library where I saw this, and I know there are several staff members from there, so feel free to correct me. They're doing some kind of virtual puzzle, crossword puzzle with, and I'm thinking adults and seniors, that's really appealing to it. That could be something handed out on a sheet. And I'd love to see stuff that's handed out in large type, where possible, with copyright for folks, and something that tips could be available online, or ways that people could engage with that. So I think the kits are a great idea too. More and more adults are going to be needing ways to engage with these online programs. So many great ideas out there already.
Absolutely. And we did have another really good question here. Summer reading programs. I know for so many people, the pandemic struck right when the planning for summer reading is really kind of getting going. So we just had a really good question about what are people doing for summer reading programs? How are you accounting for sort of the lost time, both in marketing and in what staff are able to do? So Sydney, I guess we'll start with you, and then Amy will give you a chance to weigh in.
So in the past, our summer reading program has looked like K through 12 weekly classes, and everyone had a reading log. Depending on your age level was how much you had to read. X many minutes, and then once they reached X many minutes, they got a ticket to enter for a raffle basket at the end of summer. So we worked backwards. Well, we know we're not having weekly programs, so what can we offer? And as we get more staff back, we're hoping to offer more, but we're looking at, one activity per week for each age level there that we can share out, and that includes doing some curbside programming as well with like craft or STEM kits. And then our Library Foundation purchased the Reader Zone app for us to use this summer. So we created 5 different groups within our summer reading program: a Read With Me group from birth to pre-K, a K to 2, a 3 to 6th grade, 7th through 12th grade, and an adult one. So the birth through pre-K, they're supposed to read 3 books a day. And then the K through 12th grade, theirs is either 20 or 30 minutes a day. And then the adult is 8 books by the end of summer reading. So we still have all these prizes and things to give away. So the way we structured it is once they log their first read, they get an entry into win a raffle basket. And then once they hit 25, 50, 75, and 100% of their goal, they get additional entries to try to win our raffle baskets at the end of summer. And then once people hit 50%, they get a prize from us. And for our K through 12 or our birth through 12th graders, whenever they get their first read, they'll also get like our summer reading goodie bag that they typically get whenever they sign up for summer reading. So that's where we are, and it's going to be interesting to see. We've already had a lot of families reach out to us that, yes, they're interested. They want to sign up. They want their kids to read like it had been in the past. So we think we'll have some of our regulars join in, but we're also interested to see what new people might come in, since it is something virtual, something that they don't have to come to the library for, because a lot of times families are so busy throughout the summer with summer camps and visiting families and vacations. So we're interested to see how it shakes out.
Thanks, Sydney, and thanks. People in our audience are also giving some great information on what they're using, different software and things like that. Amy, your insight on summer reading?
This is another great time to make those patrons work for you. Can you make them fill out reviews that would count as time reading, or in some way put those on social media? And that might draw more people to go then look at their posts on social media. Same thing with the teens, have them fill out book reviews of some kind, or even make small video book talks. Those can be done with younger kids too. I think the ones I've seen, and I'm trying to think about libraries that have like 5,000, 6,000 kids doing like the youth services. Definitely people entering drawings for time read. You really need that incentive to get them to sign up, especially if they're not used to signing up digitally. Can sign up count? And some of you talked about challenges in the chat, I noticed. So just signing up for summer reading counts towards something. And again, with drawings. And I noticed many libraries are posting that there's going to be an end of the summer big event. And I certainly hope that's going to be true for all of us. I'm the worst patron, and I mentioned this in the chat when we were getting started for my local library. They have a very generous friends group, and they do T-shirts for all adults, kids, and the teens don't want to wear them. So it's adults and kids. And of course, I'm like, wait, we don't get that till the end of the summer. Find some kind of incentive to make them participate now, even though there's going to be a big change and things will be different. So that's going to be the key. And I noticed even like Chicago Public and some of the bigger ones in the area are having people just registering to do it, enters them in a drawing right away. So that's going to be the hardest part.
Amy, I love your ideas of making them work for it and also having them create something that we can then share out to other people in our community. I know in the past for our teens, for them to get an entry, they had to fill out a book review of, who their favorite character, would they recommend this book, would they not, how many out of 5 stars would they give it. And we love to incorporate something like that. But again, the logistics right now, we're just trying to get something started, but we're hoping that as we add on virtual programming, maybe participation in a virtual program can get you an extra entry. And I just love your ideas there, Amy. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think it's time we move into sort of the toughest part of the discussion. And again, I just want to remind our audience, you guys have been doing such a great job, but we are relying on you guys too. This is not a one-sided discussion. And also, we are recording today's event. The chat is going to be made available, as well as the slides and everything you hear. So you will get a chance to view things afterwards if you have to leave or you want to hear it again. But eventually, at some point, we are going to be back to something that looks like normal. But as many people have pointed out, normal will not be the same. And when we look at going back to in-person programming, there are going to be all kinds of things that we never thought about before that we're going to have to think about now. So, Sydney, I'll start with you first. But when we do eventually go back to in-person programming, how do you think it's going to look different? What are we going to need to prepare for?
I think we personally are a long way off from that. In Pennsylvania, our library and several other libraries around us have already canceled very large programs going into the fall out of an abundance of caution, which does make sense. One thing that we've discussed within our team at the library is go ahead and adapting our physical space for when even patrons are allowed back in the building to reduce, touch points, to be able to practice social distancing as much as possible. But we've also discussed our programs. Typically in our area where we have programs, we might cap it to 50 kids. Well, 50 kids plus their adults looks a lot closer to 80 people. And with 80 people in this space that we have, there is no way to be socially distant. And even if we're at a point where we don't need to be socially distant, I think that people going forward in the future will want their own space and be a lot more weary of being that close to strangers. So we've started looking at a little bit harder of would we start capping programs a little bit lower to give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room, as well as if the weather's nice, utilizing some outdoor areas around our library and also in our community to where people would be able to have some more of their own space and feel more comfortable. Our local park has a very large amphitheater that we would love to use for a story time. That way it could be open to a lot of people, but they could be able to space out with their families as needed.
All right. Thanks, Sydney. Amy, what do you think we're looking at?
Well, Sydney has so many great thoughts about ways that it might be manageable in the future. But I had to laugh this morning. I got an email that my local karate studio is going back to in-person classes. Now, I don't think they're doing the fighting or the self-defense. I couldn't imagine how that was going to happen, but they are doing outdoor programming. Not everyone is going to have the facilities to do outdoor programming or, frankly, the weather, right, where we can depend on that. But being creative about where programs are going to be. I mean, if they can do it, there is some way that we can figure it out while keeping our seniors down to our babies safe in the library, and us, of course. So smaller events. I've had people ask me for some of the food talks. I usually hand out treats with those. I definitely can get like wrapped treats. Libraries are talking to me about holiday history of candy events. You can get wrapped ones. You can do smaller groups, and I give big discounts for doing repeat programs for libraries. A lot of performers will work with you. If you have something where you know you're going to have more people signing up, I'd absolutely be okay with libraries showing recordings of my talk later for people who wouldn't be able to come. Are there ways you can work with presenters to do things for multiple ages or multiple audiences? I think you're definitely going to be looking at that. I mean, if we thought competition for our meeting rooms was bad before, right now we have it on a whole new level as we try to spread out. But again, we're reaching people with quality services. We might not be doing the quantity that we did before, but we're still bringing them the same quality that we did before, and they are going to be grateful for that. So just things you guys are already doing an amazing job. I'm looking at the chat. Even if you're just stepping your toes in the water of doing the programming, you're making the effort, you're continuing to reach the patrons just as you have been doing.
All right. Oh, Sydney, go ahead.
I was going to say another thing we've discussed is even whenever we are able to hold some programs within our building, specifically children's story times, we may still have a lot of people who are not comfortable coming in the building. We have a lot of older family members who come and bring in their grandkids for story times throughout the week, especially during the morning for those pre-K and smaller children. And so we've discussed continuing virtual programming even once we are able to hold programs. Of course, it wouldn't be the same quantity that we've been doing right now, maybe just a few a month instead for different age levels. That way, there is still something, and even for our families who are out of town and can't make it to a program that week, they have something to fall back onto. And we've discussed how that is something we can definitely see ourselves doing even once programming does resume.
All right, thanks, Sydney. Well, we're at the end of our planned discussion, but I do see quite a bit in the chat space, people sharing mostly comments, but also some great questions as well. So as we begin to wrap up, I'll just sort of open the floor to both of you. Any other things you want to share? Any closing thoughts or comments? And to our audience, if you guys have any questions, great time to ask them. Oh, and I'm sorry, I do see a great question that was brought up before. Sorry for not addressing this earlier. There's a question about virtual burnout, and I think this is relevant for everybody. Too much time on screens, too much time in Zoom meetings, and I think whether you're doing programming or not, you probably have that problem. I know I do. So I'll just open this up to both of you. What can we do to help people deal with that, help ourselves deal with that, help alleviate that?
We've definitely gotten feedback from our community that, especially our school-aged friends and the adults too, who are having to Zoom all the time for work, if they're still at home, are zoomed out. They are getting that fatigue from all that virtual time and are looking for more things to take them away from the screen. So that's where, as we move forward, we would love to start doing more curbside programming or more things to engage a family, whether it is a Facebook share or a program, but it's something that they would complete together. So we were supposed to have a make and take Lego program where they would come to the library, make something with Legos, and get to take it home. We're now making it a take and make Lego program. Well, they will come to the library, take the Legos home, and then make something. So just trying to adapt things the best we can. The initial mode will have to be via a screen as things are virtual, but we're hoping to provide opportunities for engagement and interaction at home.
Thanks, Sydney. Amy, anything to add there?
A few ideas that might work for less screen time. And I see people are asking for college and university audiences also, can you have some sort of contest? Ask them for flash fiction. Can you ask them for poetry? Things that go along with popular events at your college. Envision what school will like 5 years in the future. Art contests, anything where they could post something that you could then again use on your site. Maybe instead of pet contests are always popular, cosplay. Again, and I'm beginning to think I'm one of the laziest programmers ever. We're going to use the talents of our patrons, again, to help us with our own events, but get them to be making and doing things that are away from the screen with some fun contests. And if you don't want to judge or you don't have the time to judge, and that's always a painful process, draw for winners. Everybody who enters might qualify for something, or have your teen advisory board judge the winners for the teen contests, things like that. So it is hard to think, how can we get away from the screen? And more, I think that's going to be a focus for us. What kind of active family events can we do? What kinds of things can we encourage families to make on their own and then report back to us so that we can keep the engagement going.
All right. As far as I can see, I think we're at the end of our audience questions. But again, I just want to say to our audience, we appreciate all your contributions. I mean, the chat here is fantastic, and we've been getting some great insights from you. So, Sydney, I'll start with you as we begin to wrap up. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to share?
One quick, I've seen in the chat several people were sharing information about publishers extending their dates. So thank you so much for doing that. I know a big cause for concern for us as we moved into July was we can't post these videos on YouTube like we had been. So we were looking at alternative ways to make things happen. We still need to have a plan in place, especially if we're going to continue doing virtual programming past the current health crisis. But thank you for sharing that information. As far as virtual programming goes altogether, it is such a process, a long, rewarding process. So don't forget that. And there are lots of other things that you can share out that other libraries are doing, even if you yourself have not created that. You're still curating information and sharing ideas with your patrons, and that's very important to remember.
All right. Thanks, Sydney. Amy, any closing thoughts for us?
Pat yourself on the back for everything you're doing already as we try to transition from this like unimaginable time that we're going through, and keep sharing ideas with colleagues. When I first got involved with YALSA, it was like finally I was around people that spoke my language, that understood what it's like to have programs where so many unexpected things happen with teens. Keep reaching out to colleagues, talking with colleagues, sharing ideas, looking at what other libraries are doing. And I think what you'll find is that you're doing amazing work also, and you'll get some more good ideas, just like we have today.
All right. Well, with that, we will wrap up. Amy and Sydney, again, I want to thank you for the wonderful discussion, the wonderful ideas today. And to our audience, thank you so much. We rely on you to make these events work, and you guys did a great job. There's been so much chat. We are going to leave the event open for just a couple minutes in case there are any chat threads that people want to close. But again, we have recorded today's event, so we'll be sending out an email giving you access to the recording within the next 24 hours. And I hope everyone has a great day and a great week. And we look forward to seeing you at another event soon. Thanks, everybody.